Yes, and they want changes. Just last month, a pilot's gun went off as he was preparing to land in North Carolina. The investigation into how that happened, well, it still goes on, but some pilot groups say cumbersome federal rules could be to blame. Cumbersome federal rules could be to blame. We want to turn now to our Special Investigation Unit correspondent, Drew Griffin. He joins us now. He's been checking into this controversy. So, is it cumbersome? Is that to blame?
We're going to show you.
One thing?
We're going to show you right now. These armed pilots, the federal flight deck officers, they've been carrying guns aboard flights since those September 11th attacks. They say they're handling their guns far too much, and federal rules are requiring them to unlock their guns in specific holster whenever they enter or exit the cockpit. Now, the pilots are saying that is what caused a gun to go off in the cockpit last month. This is the holster that the pilots are complaining about. It's designed to be locked, only according to the pilots, locking the gun into the holster while it is loaded can be dangerous. When you get into the cockpit, the lock comes off. Anytime you leave the cockpit, the lock goes on. The lock surrounds the trigger. And former weapons instructor and police officer Paul Hubel showed us just how easy it would be to get the lock in the wrong place of a loaded gun.
As you can see, this looks very secure. It looks like it's snapped. You don't really think of too much about it. And what happens is that you have this very small hole to look through, and you really can't see where the trigger is, if it is behind or if it's in front. And so what happens is the flight deck officer, he has to string this padlock through it again, but then he discovers, wait a minute, my holster's unsnapped. And then in order to snap it,
Just fired the gun.
I just fired the gun, and anything to my left, hopefully it's pointed in a safe direction, but in a cockpit, I think that's pretty dangerous no matter where it's pointed.
That is the scenario the pilots group says happened on a US Air flight when the pilot was preparing to land. Stowing the gun went off, leaving a hole in the cockpit and the side of the plane. The pilot has been placed on administrative leave. The Federal Air Marshal Service oversees the Armed Pilots Program. Its spokesman, Greg Alter, tells us that the incident that occurred aboard an in-flight aircraft on March 22nd was a one-of-a-kind occurrence. He said the TSA's current gun policy, consistent with long-standing law enforcement practices, and while not releasing any details of the investigation due to security concerns, Alter told us that any lessons learned will be implemented. The pilots just want to be able to carry their guns like air marshals do, unlocked safely on their bodies, so they don't have to handle them at all unless there's an emergency. You don't want to be handling the gun.
Well, you don't want to be, but it seems like when you're in a confined space, like the cockpit, and you're fumbling around in there, I mean, can't they understand that?
Well, that's what the pilots say. Listen, we don't want to have this lock, and some of them have the lock, and they're trying to unlock it. And, any firearms instructor will tell you, and I've talked to quite a few, the less you handle a gun, the safer the gun is. Okay. And the problem is these rules force you to handle that gun.
Special Investigations correspondent Drew Griffin. Drew, as always, much appreciated. Thank you.